Joining us on this episode is Jonathan Suckling. Jonathan is a wedding photographer based in Auckland, New Zealand, who fully embraces his entire eccentric and enthusiastic self. With almost 250,000 followers on TikTok, he's created multiple viral videos of himself running, jumping, leaping, and bounding on wedding days to set his couples at ease and create an entertaining brand identity for himself. I'm Kyle Wilson, and this is The Photographer's Problem. You're gliding into summer. Are you guys coming into summer now? Top of spring?
Yep, exactly.
So is wedding season like just about to start tuning up?
Yeah, we've got we're back into it now. So I've got 3 or 4 weddings in December, and then I've got 7 or 8 in January. So yeah, it's properly kicking off as we speak, but keeping on top of things, which has been really good. I had a bit of a break, which was awesome to just kind of play a bit of catch up and reset the tables before things kick off and just kind of keep things under control. In my dreams, I would like to keep all my editing and deliveries just flying out the door on a really good timeline and keeping on top of it, even in a big month, just at the end, having it almost cleared out sort of thing. So I'm pretty good. I've got, I think I've got 3 weddings to edit right now. So it feels good.
I was going to ask, how many for the year are you going to be working on?
Yeah, so I've got 35 for the season. We kind of count by seasons because our main season goes, across December, January, February, so kind of 12 months starting September or June, But yeah, 35 weddings from September to April. So that's good. I'm really happy with that. Last year I shot 45, so this is going to be a much nicer fit for me, I think.
Yeah, I really like that. If I'm shooting too many where I can't remember the bride and groom's name the next year, that's too many. The first year I really got overwhelmed was I was shooting. I shot 58 weddings the first year I took over a studio from someone, and it was 58 weddings and 58 editing, all suddenly out of nowhere. And to this day, can't remember anything from that year, and I'm like, that's too much. That's too much.
Yeah, it's scary. I had a wedding on Sunday, and there's a few familiar faces in the crowd, a few couples who I'd photographed before, and then there was this one girl who I was like, oh my gosh, I definitely recognize you, but I don't recognize your partner. And then I was freaking out, have I actually forgotten someone completely? This is so embarrassing. And then it clicked for me. I'm like, no, she was definitely a bridesmaid at another wedding. And so I went up and said, hey, are you wearing your bridesmaid's dress? And she's like, don't tell anyone. You figured out my secret. She was wearing this bridesmaid's dress from 2 years ago. So I was like, whew, okay, I've still got a clean record on remembering people, but it does start to get scary. I had a wedding the other day where people were there from 10 years ago, right at the start. I was like, wow. Oh my gosh, that is a time. But yeah.
Have you had anyone break up and then re-inquire with you?
Oh,
because I've dreamed of it, and it's happened once. Yeah. But I've dreamed of the funny version of it, but not the full. I've never gotten the whole of it.
Oh my gosh, no, I don't think it's happened yet. But yes, also repeat discounts. 10% off next time.
Yeah.
Go for it.
Break up. Please rehire me. I'm looking for a referral business. This is just double the income. I'll do discounts. Exactly. I had one guy. They got divorced, and I saw it on Facebook that day. I saw that he was dating someone new, and I made a joke to my business partner at the time. I was like, how funny would it be if we got an email from this guy? And then within an hour, we got an inquiry email. And years apart from his wedding, so my pricing was so different then. And I just remember thinking, how did that conversation go at home? Hey, hun.
Yeah.
I know these really great photographers from this other wedding I was in.
Yeah. Exactly. That was so good. They're not the reason my marriage didn't last, but they're amazing.
I'm going to pause this here for 1 second because I can see my audio or my video just is geeking out. Give me 1 second. Sorry.
Yeah, lagging a little bit.
Yeah, what's going on there?
Actual recording is higher quality.
Yeah, that's pretty normal. But let me just see what's let me just kill my camera and bring it back. Sorry, 1 sec.
Oh, good.
Haven't actually had that before. All right, we'll see if that.
What is it? How uploaded are you when it says or is it just me?
99%. It usually hovers at 99. And at the very end, we'll stay on for another minute or two. But super weird. All right.
Cool.
Hey, Ulysses, editor guy.
Okay.
Cut that. I hope he leaves that part in.
Yeah.
But yeah, did you have anything over the off season that you were like, okay, this is off season project stuff. I got to work on this. I got to do a good job and get stuff caught up and make this project happen. I feel like I have 2 weeks worth of work every winter to work on that I spread out over 6 months and play video games instead.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Well, yeah, I've actually quit playing video games, although recently I've actually just started again. So that's a little aside. We don't need to talk about that and our nerdy gaming history. But no, I did have a few things. I kind of wanted to get on top of my editing, of course, because we kind of had 2 seasons that just ran back to back. Because last winter I had about 12 weddings over those 3 months, so it was still kind of going at like 4 weddings per month over winter. So, and then we just had two massive seasons that were sitting on either end of that. So it was kind of like 2 years of nonstop work. And I just wanted to get my editing queue down to zero for the first time in 2 years. And also we ended up actually taking a holiday. So we did like a 6-week trip to Australia and just caught up with a bunch of friends who we hadn't seen in years. And we had never actually traveled to Australia together. So we really wanted to go and just like be local tourists in our backyard and that kind of thing, and jump across the ditch and hang out with snakes and kangaroos and all that fun stuff. So that was awesome, just having a really good break where we just didn't do any work, and it was glorious. And I feel like it really set us up for a good year here. And Bailey, my partner, has gone full time with her video work now. So once we got back from Australia, that was like fun getting the office all set up and learning to navigate working together and being together 24/7.
I think taking really cool. Time off is like here in the States, at least, what'll happen is I rush through November, December to get photos for people for family holidays and things like that. And then somehow there's still a January, like I'll have a January or a February or March wedding sitting there, or maybe 2 or 3 or 4 of them. And now I'm editing those by the time June comes around when real weddings start. And then I'm in fall and I'm editing those. And it does feel like there's not this break that I was promised. And even when there is, it feels like it feels really hard. And I'm sure you understand, but it feels really hard to get those last 6, 5, 4, 2, 1, whatever amount of weddings left in the tank really wrapped up so that you can go on a trip, turn off, maybe go breathe in some creativity a little bit rather than constantly exhaling it. So I'm really glad you got a chance to do that. It's a really, I feel like, underrated aspect of end of the year editing crunch so that you can go do something else.
Yeah, exactly. And like, that's what I'm trying to keep going forward. Because it just feels it just takes such a mental weight off your shoulders being on top of your editing, I feel. And I'm just trying to be really disciplined this year, especially with Bailey going full time. It's like, we want to actually enjoy any time off that we have now whereas before, our hours kind of were constantly on top of each other. So then I'll be like, oh, cool, I'll just work this evening and get this work done because she's finishing late or whatever. Yeah. So now it's like, okay, this time that we have free is really valuable. Let's actually try and switch off and to kind of create a better balance. So it's been going really good. I'm hoping to have myself all caught up on editing before Christmas. Nice. And then that means I can actually just enjoy Christmas holidays and stuff, which is our summer. And that's like the best time with families and beaches, and very different from the Northern Hemisphere. But
that's kind of amazing in that way. And I wondered about that too, if you're both in the creative field and both working like that. I have found when I'm in a relationship that it's almost like the final cog in my little workflow machine. I go, okay, I really need to be wrapped up with everything by 5 o'clock so that I have all this free time with a person, because the rest of the day needs to be like, I'm way more productive. Do you guys both find that you're able to go, okay, I really want to hang out with each other at 5 o'clock, so get everything done?
Yeah, it is, especially I think the biggest thing for me was weekends. Like when we have a weekend free, Bailey was just like, no, this has to be a weekend. Like, you're not doing work. And so that's something that I never really had to, like, the rubber never really met the road in the past on that front. And I was always trying to do some extra work over the weekends. And now she's like, no, like, if I'm going to be full-time self-employed, I'm going to enjoy some time off. And so we've been having some awesome weekends and time with friends and dinners and going out and stuff like that. So yeah, it's been much better. And I think getting up early and I've been getting up a little bit earlier than I used to, and doing a bit of exercise first thing in the morning, I think actually has made a big difference.
You're such a proper adult. You can see Look at you go.
You're
glowing with health.
I've started running. Running. It's perfect. It's that's right. No. It was there must be a reason why it is cliche, because there's something.
It
good
totally
in
is.
Stuff,
I'm a night owl. I would way rather be up till 3 a.m. doing something, but my life operates so much better if I'm at the gym at 7, and I do other activities throughout the day, like riding a bike or something. And as my wedding timelines have shifted, it used to be every Saturday throughout my entire 20s was absorbed with a wedding, and often the Friday or Sunday surrounding it. Now, shooting so few weddings on purpose, having a Saturday off and riding my bike around the city with friends, I see weddings happening. And I can't help but think, that looks terrible. I'm so glad I'm not doing that today. And so having those free weekends or even 3 weekends between weddings has got to be pretty amazing.
Huge. Such a win when you get a weekend off like that, eh?
So
sorry, I'll let you take.
No, you're great. You're great. There's no real reins here. Like I have these 5 questions, and if sometimes we get to them. Yesterday's podcast, we didn't even talk about these, so it's okay. But I feel like we've known each other for a really long time just via Facebook, and I don't really think I've ever even I've known you more than I've known your business and the work that you do. So it's kind of one of those situations. Cool. And so as I've seen you grow, I know that there was an explosion of growth when you had kind of a couple videos go viral that every person that's listened to this podcast has had their friends send them an annoying amount. So thanks for that.
Yes. But you're welcome. Don't worry. I also get tagged into those conversations. Like, actually, it's my friend Jonathan.
Yeah, I actually forgot about it until we saw each other in Auckland. I was like, oh yeah, that's where these came from. Damn it. But
this is the
minus the virality of the stuff that you've done as your just wedding business has grown. What's been your proudest moment of work as of the last few years of your business growing?
Yeah, I think I saw that question when you sent through the list, and I was kind of thinking about that. What is sort of my proudest moment of my career? And it's tough. I feel like I've had a lot of I've achieved a lot of things that I really hoped to achieve, and I was really stoked with things like speaking at conferences or shooting weddings overseas or this or that. But I think probably it's a weird one, but probably buying our house, I think, was like just a crazy moment where it's like, oh my gosh, like I'm not just a kid who's just been taking photos since he left high school. Like I've actually been able to turn this art and this passion into something tangible that we can live in. And I'm really adulting now. So I think that was probably the proudest moment, I think, is like, I think a lot of the other things I would be proud of are like, accolades or, people I've met or the clout that I've got or this or that. But that was just like cool to be like, wow, I've actually like turned, it's not just like a fun thing that I've done, I've actually been able to turn it into something that's real and adulting, and that was really exciting. So I think it's probably...
Does that crank the pressure up for you at all? Like going, okay, this job now, I have to do the math in my head and say, I need this much money every year. I'm willing to shoot this many weddings. It means I need to charge this much minimum, which is a math structure I don't feel a lot of photographers go through internally. And to do that and go, okay, well, I need to make this much now. And if I don't, now I have real problems. Like, or do you feel really secure in kind of the track that things are going?
I think it's really interesting because obviously, like, before you get that loan from the bank, they're breathing down your neck, they're checking all your accounts, and especially as someone who's self-employed, they kind of view your income with a lot more scrutiny. So it was also kind of happening during COVID, which was quite an uncertain time, and that was kind of stressful, but just really interesting. I think it made either it was coincidence or maybe it made my frontal lobe develop at the same time, because I was like 25 or so at the time. And so I feel like it just made me like actually realize I need to know my numbers in terms of my business, partly because I was constantly sending, profit and loss reports and income summaries to the bank. And I think in the past that was always that's in the too hard basket. I can't be bothered looking at those numbers. And then it turned me into like a real details, analytical numbers kind of guy. And so that was like kind of made me get really aware of my finances. And then what was really interesting is that before we got the loan approved, I was really scared. I was kind of playing scared and conservative. And that was also because of COVID, things like that. But then as soon as the loan was approved and I didn't feel like, and we, once we got the house and I didn't feel like the bank could take it away from us or we're breathing down our neck anymore, I feel like that kind of mindset changed and I became a lot more relaxed. And a lot of other things happened coincidentally at the same time. But if I look at like my numbers when I'm doing bank stuff, it's like the business is like, my earnings are like more than double what I was earning pre-buying the house. And I think part of that is just like the confidence now that I know that I'm secure in that. And it also gives you something, I guess, to work towards. And especially like in the past, I'd be like, oh, I stayed for another hour, don't stress about that. That's no problem at all. And now I'm like, no, I'm an adult who has to pay for a mortgage. Like I deserve to be paid for my time, So I've just become a lot more, rather than being charitable with essentially what's taking away from my ability to live a good life, and just being like, oh, cool, you can just have this extra labor from me for free. I'm like, no, like if you'd like it,
otherwise I'm going to go home.
I'm happy to invoice you for it. So yeah, exactly. So I think it made me feel way more confident to value myself. And And we can talk about that a little bit later, about some of the changes that I've made in my
Yeah.
business, and kind of that kind of goes hand in hand.
My two questions are on the budget things. So in the last couple of years, personally, I made two really conscientious goals. I said I need to work on my physical health and my financial health, both of which things are like my family just didn't teach me. It's just not something that I was picked up along the way. And so we've always been a family that gets $3 and spends $5. And I've also been in that situation up until a few years ago, honestly. And so I had to get a really tight grip on my finances. And previously in the past, I used a third-party company for my photography business called Bench to kind of try to facilitate some of that. So my two questions in that is, A, did this process of having to buy a home and understanding your business finances also turn you into a personal finance budget? Because I do think they're two different things to pay attention to. One's more day-to-day. And then also if my follow-up question, where did it go? If you ever use any third-party companies for any of your financial stuff, if you've hired Bench and said, hey, can you take care of this? Or has it all been your own process?
Yeah, so it's kind of been all my own process. I use Xero, which is like New Zealand's largest market cap company.
Yeah,
Xero.
I also use Xero.
Anyway, it's like there you go. So Xero, I became really familiar with like looking at my profit and loss and kind of keeping aware of like how much money is coming in, how I'm tracking compared to last year, where the expenses, where the money's going. So I became way more intimately familiar with my business and that kind of thing. In terms of personal budgeting, I kind of became obsessed with like understanding mortgage structures and rates and how this whole kind of economy works in that sense. And but in terms of like a smaller level, I don't know if you say macro or micro. I can't remember the correct jargon macro? There. Macro. Let's just say on the macro level. My simple philosophy is to kind of just focus on bringing as much money in as possible and spending as little money as possible. And we kind of have that as an overarching theme in our lives, but don't go down to a crazy detail of like, only this much per week and that kind of thing, which is definitely super helpful. But I just think, with how things have been the last few years, that's kind of been the easiest thing for us to maintain. And without getting too nerdy, essentially like, the biggest thing for us is just to increase how much cash we have in our bank accounts, because that kind of offsets the mortgage interest payments. And so in that sense, like things like traditional investing into stocks and stuff, they can't really outcompete the interest savings compared to what we pay on a house, because interest rates are quite high in New Zealand. So that's the focus for now. Once we kind of feel like we're further along those goals, then I'm keen to follow, I don't know if you've heard of the Barefoot Investor, but he's an Australian finance guy who's kind of put together just a really simple structure in terms of how to like put your income aside for things that will be emergency funds, things that will be for splurging on nice things that you want, things that will be nice to buy in the future. And then, it's just a really simple kind of the Barefoot Investor, just like a really simple way of living.
I do YNAB, so you need a budget, and I've tried to do it maybe 4 or 5 or 6 times. And our friend Dan Sprague, his wife, was the one who showed it to me initially. I said, hey, can you teach me how to do this? And after many attempts at it, it's finally very successful now. But it is the idea that like every dollar has a job. Awesome. There isn't just a savings account. My savings account is broken down into income replacement, emergency savings, vehicle maintenance, family, pet savings, all these tasks for the money, so that it's not just a pile of it. Because if it was a pile of it, I'm going to go out tomorrow and buy a really nice bicycle. So this says, okay. And it's so funny to see my financial growth go up, and yet my brain says I'm broke. I'm like, no. Awesome. You have $8 left to spend for coffee this month. Keep it tight.
Cool.
But I do the same in the business too. I can overhead it and go, okay, this booking came in, especially now as I'm trying to figure out how to, I'm in a weird state of trying to deconstruct my business and go, all right, what's the overhead I need to maintain to just keep it functional if I want to shoot a wedding, but not make it something that I have to bring in $30,000 or $40,000 of overhead. So just a little different space there, but it sounds like you're making.
What are those apps?
YNAB. You need a budget. YNAB.com. Big fan. I'll link it in the freaking comments on this thing. It's so, and when you meet someone that uses it, they're like a big nerd about it. Like if you really sat here off recording with me, I run my budget, my business's budget, my parents' budget, and I just started a friend's budget.
No way.
And someone else is asking me to help them out, because they're like, okay, clearly you're doing something right. What are you doing? So, and that's just coming from a family that's
so
kind of been, we grew up not broke, but I'm like first generation, not poor. every other member of my family has lived in a trailer. Like it really had to teach myself, all right, how do I make $6 work?
Awesome. Cool. Yeah, because I think a lot of these apps like often don't integrate so well in New Zealand because they're often built for the US market and that kind of thing. So in the past, traditionally, like I never really looked too deep into these things because they don't usually have good integration with New Zealand banking systems and that kind of thing. But hopefully, maybe things have changed because, that's really interesting. I've actually potentially, I don't know if we cut this out, but like I may have just placed an order on a Tesla, which is like crazy. And I feel like, this is just nerding out, and I feel like the Kiwi in me, there's a thing in New Zealand called tall poppy syndrome, which means that if someone gets too tall above the rest, you chop them down, essentially. So in New Zealand, we try not to ever boast. It's like the worst, the most shameful character trait would be arrogant or boastful. And as a result, New Zealanders just run around mumbling and looking down and being awkward when they talk about things. I know in America, you're actually allowed to talk about the fact if you've had success. But the moral of the story is that it's really interesting for me because I would never recommend buying an expensive car that you don't need necessarily. But by having that change in the last week, I feel like I've just refocused my attention in terms of my finances, because I think now we're at a point where we're very comfortable with the mortgage payments and our progress on that. And so then everything that was left over just kind of became, let's just go to the movies, let's go spend this, let's eat out or whatever. And so now that I've kind of like, I got a goal again that is bigger than our current finance situation, if that makes sense. It's like, okay, I need to be sharper with how I spend my money so that I can afford this, you know?
I actually really think like we can, we'll cut this out or talk about it more after the recording. YNAB is really amazing because it's the first rule of it is every dollar gets a job. And I have noticed, like, if I don't give the dollars a job, then they're just there. And how can I actually track and predict or calculate how much just there is? Just there can't grow if I'm not tracking everything else, which is just so great. Like, I have my entire life in there down to like, I need a passport in 10 years renewed. Cool. They're just and it's put me in a spot that's very different than the business has been, where I know every single transaction is going to come through down to the penny. There's never an unexpected expense. Everything's like really consciously thought about. And I feel like running a studio, and I don't know that other photographers can relate to this, or if other people are ADHD like me and just bad with their money, but when I've run the studio, money would come in. I would have clients spending, they're dropping $4, $5, $6, $10,000. Well, now that's just in my account. It doesn't have a job, so I just know it runs overhead, and I just need to book more work to maintain the previous. And that's this weird stress point every winter. Like, will people find me on Instagram to like my work, find me, book me, and pay my rent so I can order pizza? Like, it's very stressful. So the idea so amazing that your career has gotten to the point that you're able to buy a home, have that focus, and build upon that. It's so cool. Throughout that, what's been kind of the worst decisions though? Like, what's the flip? What's been like your business decision where you went, ooh, probably shouldn't have done that. That did not benefit.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. So I think for me, probably the biggest thing that I've obviously been on this journey over the last few years, and I think probably the worst decision was probably not charging hourly for coverage. For the majority of my career, I was charging more based on coverage. So are you having a first look? Do you want photos of one of you or both of you getting ready? And then what time would you like me to finish, kind of? And that was the only kind of time-sensitive thing. It was either a 9:30 finish or a midnight finish. And so changing to an hourly, in that structure, essentially, I was kind of gifting people freedom.
And how many hours would that be?
Like,
what were you starting? Because I'm sure I'm shooting American Western weddings, so it's always a little different.
Yeah, so like I would often perhaps start at like 11:30 in the morning and maybe finish at 9 o'clock at night. So maybe like 10-hour days. So a big change that I've made to my business that's been huge for me was changing more to an hourly structure and actually starting with 8 hours as a starting place, because I would say that most weddings in New Zealand, 9 hours is going to be a good fit, but also maybe like a third to half my weddings, 8 hours could do the trick too, if people just structure their day in the right way. And so doing it that way, I feel really great about it, because look, for everyone who fits the 8-hour package by default, great. Like, they're getting exactly what they want for a good price and that kind of thing. Whereas anyone who wants more, they pay for it. So rather than having like a default 9-hour coverage, which I think a lot of people have, where essentially you're just spending an extra hour of your time when half of the couples might not even need it, it's ridiculous. And then by contrast, just the fact that people have to pay money for extra hours,
Yeah.
It's just huge, you know, like the other day, they ended up adding on 2 hours to their wedding coverage, and that's like pays me
That
more than what I
last
would
minute
make selling an
email.
album.
Yeah, I
And
tell
it's
clients all
really
the time. I
easy.
go, oh yeah, you can select
Yeah.
this. We can always go up in packages. We can't go down,
Yeah.
but we can always go up. And if you
Yes.
want to, like,
Yes.
I love a
Yeah.
week before a wedding, and they go, hey, you know what? We probably need an extra hour on either
Yeah.
end of the day. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks for the extra
Boom.
$1,000 or
Boom.
$1,500 that I didn't know was going to happen. And especially if it's a
Yes.
travel
Yeah.
gig, my mental,
Exactly.
this is photographer boy math,
Yeah.
goes, well, now that travel's all free. You know,
Yeah.
like the flight and the food and the car
Yeah.
rental that I
Yeah.
paid for is
Exactly.
now really minimized. And cool, like, let's
Yeah.
stick that back in the bank and,
Yeah.
you know, pay for their album down the line or whatever, you
100%.
know?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So I think that's absolutely been like probably one of the biggest changes I made to my business, and that's definitely if I had just done that so much sooner, all those extra hours I just gave away just because they kind of fit with how my packages were being done in the past. I wouldn't even want to know the amount of unbilled extra kind of hours that I charged out that I didn't charge out. So that's been a huge thing, and like. I think another thing is probably not maybe to flip it instead of being like the worst thing I've done for my business. Conversely, like
That's
the
great.
best
It's
thing,
the
one of
next
the other
question.
best things I've done for my business yeah. Oh, there we go. Perfect. Is like is probably focusing on local weddings and not shooting out of town weddings so much anymore. Because I think I've found that like the more you shoot local, I think the older I get, all I want is like an easy wedding day. Like all I care about is just good, nice people to work with, and I don't need to go to the mountaintops or fly to the South Island for that.
Sleeping in your
down
own
the road
bed
has that.
at the end of
And
the
I'd
wedding
rather
day
be.
is pretty top
There we
tier.
go.
Like,
That's
I don't want to shoot Chicago weddings, but
doesn't get better.
Boy, it's pretty sick to leave at 8:30 and then go home.
Yes, sleeping in your own bed, that is exactly
Would
it.
you say
the
have
best
you
thing in the
found
world?
it?
And so
I have always found it easier to market a little bit everywhere. Like to dominate local markets like Seattle, Chicago, Auckland, whatever it may be, feels really, really difficult. But to say I'm a photographer in Washington, Oregon, California, Iceland, Barcelona feels easier. Have you, as you've pivoted towards more local stuff, was that an uphill battle? Like, I'm not an Auckland photographer. I'm a travel photographer, and now I'm trying to be an Auckland photographer.
Yeah. So I think naturally, like when I first started my journey, I worked a lot with a guy called Jake Thomas, who was based in Waihi, which is kind of in like the Bay of Plenty region in New Zealand. So that's kind of like 2 hours drive from my house. And so I think a lot of my initial sort of referral work was in that space. But obviously the fact that I'm based in Auckland, naturally I shot more Auckland weddings over the years. And so I did have a decent referral base in Auckland. Like I think a third of New Zealand's population lives in Auckland. It's our biggest city. So luckily, that means it's very expensive to live in, but it also means there's a lot of work available locally. So it wasn't too hard. And I found it's just kind of like a snowball effect of, every time you shoot another Auckland wedding, there's another 100 guests who are based in that region, and it just kind of, it grows and kind of feeds itself. So I found that like focusing on staying local really paid off in terms of the returns, because it's just, you're meeting local vendors, you're working at local venues, you've got all these like networking conditions that are kind of building and building and building. So I didn't find it too hard to make that change because I guess New Zealand's got a bit of a different structure in terms of
have you felt that
because
everybody seeks their quote unquote ideal client, or they're trying to be the ideal photographer for a certain kind of couple, and I do feel that travel couples tend to do a little bit better job of looking at the photographer's personality and their online presence to dictate if it's the right fit. And so you tend, like, I feel like most of my travel work, I love all my couples. But most of my travel work, I really love them because they've
cut that out.
They really have gone the diligence to make sure that I'm the right fit, and vice versa. But local might not go through that same thing. And so I feel like your presence online is it's Jonathan Suckling. Like you're you online. And so you get that brand. What's your part of your process to make sure that the couples that you do get for local, like you said, you just want to work with cool people. You just want to chill today. You want people that you're going to be friends with. Like, especially if you're spending 8-9 hours with these people, you're going to kind of be buddies at the end of the day, regardless. What's part of your business process to make sure you get those kind of couples?
Yeah, so I think firstly, like just the viral videos that I create are just super polarizing. Because when I started off in this journey as a wedding photographer, I spent a lot of time working with Jake Thomas and Danelle Bohane, who at the time were just the absolute kings and queens of the industry, and all their weddings were just like super high end, like really fancy, really rich couples. And there's quite a few couples where it was just like, it felt so scary to be working with them because they were just very intense, sort of A-type personalities, like clearly a CEO of a company. And it was an interesting relationship I found with those clients. And then ever since I started my own career, I feel like I've almost never shot clients like that. And I think the viral videos are probably part of it, because if you see me doing a dive roll and acting like a silly person at a wedding, and you're quite highly strung and that kind of personality type, you're just going to be like, no, not at all for us. So I think I've been really lucky to avoid any of those sort of intense, difficult clients. So that's probably one part of it. And the other thing is that I won't let a couple book me until we've had the chance to meet. And that's more for them just to get the chance to meet me and to decide if I'm the right kind of person for them. So I'm not going to change who I am in that meeting. I'm just going to be myself. And I'll never say no to a couple. I don't think I've really ever said no to a couple, because if they do believe that they want me in my work, unless it's something that I don't feel like I'm capable of providing, in my head, I'm like, who am I to deny them? Do you crank up as their wedding photographer? So, but I do make sure I make
crank up aspects of your personality on a wedding day. I know that some, like for me, for instance, I'm this all the time. Work, friends, family, clients, doesn't matter. I'm this, and I don't sugarcoat stuff. Awesome. I'll tell a client, your face looks dumb. That's not good.
Yeah.
And let's change that. But I've worked with photographers that they take little pieces of their personality and they really exaggerate it for the day of, and they're kind of like a walking TikTok. Do you stay like you are now, or are you like extra? Are you an extra goofy photographer when you're working with couples?
I think when you see the viral videos that I've created, like those are probably, 50 seconds out of a 9-hour day. So I'm not like dive rolling through the ceremony, pirouetting my way across a sunset shoot nonstop. But I definitely enjoy like bringing the banter, having the laughs, and definitely bringing some antics at weddings. So I think I like, it's kind of, I definitely like, I enjoy performing. I love making people laugh. I love performing. And I definitely, the level of social energy I pour into a wedding day, I definitely couldn't maintain that Monday to Friday. But for weddings, I definitely do amp it up a little bit more. But it's something crazy. I feel like a lot of what I enjoy is just making people laugh just by saying funny things throughout the day.
Do you get any pushback? Do you get any pushback from that, from like family members, parents, uncles, grandparents? They're like, "Who is that? What are you doing?"
No, I think people can. I remember Jake Thomas. I've mentioned his name many times. I should send him a referral code or something. But yeah, like Jake Thomas, my original mentor, he always said, "Sell the sizzle, not the sausage." So in New Zealand, we have these things called sausage sizzles. I don't know what the equivalent in America is. Maybe a barbecue outside a Dodgers game with like frankfurters, sausages. I don't know.
Oh yeah, we might call that like a tailgate.
Like a tailgate. Okay, there we go. So yeah, he's just like, it's all about the experience. And he said, if you're excited and passionate about what you do, that's always going to be what people gravitate towards. And luckily, I have always found like a natural passion for wedding photography. It's all I ever wanted to do since I left high school. And so I think even if people might find me a bit much initially, well, firstly, just to backtrack a sec, I feel like my biggest skill as a wedding photographer is my ability to people watch and to match energy. So I don't try to like create energy that isn't there. I just try and like work to kind of add to and support the energies that's there. But in terms of like people being alienated by it, because I know that I also like enjoy my quiet time as well. And so if I met myself from a third person, I might be like, okay, this guy's a lot. But I do feel that like when people just see I'm just trying to have a good time and I'm there to have fun, and they see the passion coming through, I get heaps of compliments from all the grandmas and stuff at the end of the night, and oh, you're just so fantastic, and oh wow, I can't believe they found you on the internet and all this kind of stuff. So I haven't had too much pushback. I think I've had like one or two weddings where like I had this one wedding where the couple said to me, hey, we know you've got your antics online and we love what you do, but just with our family, is it possible for you to maybe just taper that back a little bit, because we've got some more conservative family members and we're not sure how that would fit with that. Okay, this wedding turned out to be the loosest wedding I have ever shot. And I was just thinking like, there is no way you told me to tone it down when literally this is absolute chaos. Like I saw nipples, okay? I saw like people filling up like bubble gum. Okay, I won't even say anything more to compromise.
It's always the ones who are the most like, hey, look out. That's the wedding where people are going crazy.
Yes, and I was just like, okay, well, good to know. And so I've been really lucky to not have too much pushback. And yeah, I feel like I'm really good at reading the room and kind of knowing when it's the right time to kind of say things, do things, etc. So I've definitely been with people who are very awkward and don't have that sense. And that's a very awkward experience watching a videographer who does not.
Yeah, I was gonna assume your ability to like match energy, which every photographer takes a different approach. I've had people that work with me, and they assumed I was going to be very like deep and brooding because of my style of work I post publicly, and maybe some of the captions I put with it. And I'm generally just sad on the internet, and so people assume that's going to be my case. But actually, like to operate a wedding day, I need to be like assertive, loud, bubbly, in charge, and also a little despondent, a little like I don't care, and that's how I do it. And you'll have people that are really reserved. I think I've heard that it's not Pharaoh Aristi, but somebody else who's very quiet in the background. They're like, when it's in the morning, I'm just way in the corner. Maybe it's Narav or something like that. And you definitely, I can see, would match energy. You're like, all right, this is the tone. This is how we need to keep everybody up, because I think that your work and the way you speak about it is equal. Like you're both a loud personality, and the work is also loud images. There's not like a quietness to the type of photography that you shoot.
Yeah.
When you're not doing, obviously your partner is doing video creative stuff, and you're playing squash when you're not shooting weddings. Are you shooting anything else? Are you doing any of the personal projects? Do you have a camera on you that you're carrying regularly? Are you kind of a photo nerd in any other capacity outside of weddings?
No, so for me, like weddings have always been it. So like when I was in high school, I came across the work of James Day, who's a Sydney wedding photographer, and I was just instantly obsessed. Like I hadn't seen modern wedding photography, and as soon as I saw that, I was just completely dead set. Like that's all I wanted to do. And so my parents made me go and get like a diploma and to study to be safe. So I spent a year doing commercial photography diploma, which kind of covered like product photography, jewelry, food, fashion, architecture, portraiture, like every kind of aspect of photography apart from weddings. And at the end, all I wanted to do still was weddings. So I think a lot of photographers can kind of get into weddings because it's a good way to make money and it's not really their passion. But for me, weddings was the passion always. And I love the fact that, we get thrown into this wedding day with like these tight sets of variables, timeline, location that we can't change, etc. And from that, we have to try and create something incredible. And so that's why I always love, watching the greats as I kind of came up and seeing their amazing work that I'd pull out every weekend. I just loved how we're all doing the same thing and we had to try and be creative within those tight boundaries. So for me, weddings is it in terms of like what I enjoy shooting. Beyond that, I enjoy playing, climbing, playing squash, surfing, and now running. These are my random other passions, and also playing.
Honestly,
Fortnite.
I think that's I think that's so amazing because it's like just to spin on me a little bit, like I found so much of my happiness from the lane of wedding photography, and I sometimes forget how beautiful modern wedding photography is until I present a handful of photographers to a friend who has never seen it, and then my friend replied back and she goes, "You've ruined my Instagram feed. All you did was put like 10 photographers in there." I gave her like Kristen Parker, India Earl, Jordan, you probably, and now her feed, she goes, "I didn't know weddings could look like this." And so I found all of it there, and I love to hear that other people have another lane outside that. I didn't for a while, and now it's like, cool, photography is this thing I do. It's not encompassing of my entire identity. It's just one part of it, and I still want to go play soccer and tennis and volleyball and cycle and everything else. So that's pretty great that you kind of have that one specific lane.
Yeah, I think another thing that I found as well is probably like, I think my core of who I am and what I find value in life is bringing joy to other people. And so weddings was kind of like this perfect vessel because I am also an absolute nerd. So that kind of synthesized two things, like understanding how technical cameras work, but then also it's essentially like I kind of view myself as a jester. Like I met a couple last night and they said, we don't want someone who's just there to take photos. We want someone who's going to like entertain people and that people will talk about after the wedding. And I was like, perfect. Like I'm going to be a great fit for you. And
that is you,
literally.
1000%.
Yeah, I was like, book me. That's perfect. Because I think for me, like the other part of weddings for me that I've enjoyed so much is socially. Like I've enjoyed forcing myself into hundreds of days where I've met people from different backgrounds, culturally, socially, and this amazing melting pot of people. And I've had to always find my feet in terms of like trying to get people on board with me and my energy. And I think maybe it's like the modern equivalent of being a door-to-door salesman is like jumping into people's most important day of their lives and just trying to float, not sink.
Well, you just have we have a superpower that I forget that I have once in a blue until sometime last year. I walked into a listening party thing with another friend that I wasn't supposed to be at. It was just like, oh, this is a sea of people that don't look like me. I'm really sticking out here. And I could tell the girl I was with was kind of nervous. She's like, are we supposed to be here? And I realized how chill I was about it because I am used to being in a room with 200 people and not knowing a single one of them. And that is kind of like the door-to-door salesman thing. We can't, and I have to like think back on that sometimes. And there's a few superpowers that come with weddings too, I think, where you wake up in the morning and not all the time you're like, oh, I'm super stoked to go shoot a wedding. Sometimes you wake up and you're like, okay, we got to go do this. And you never get to bail on it. You never get to call in sick. And so those two aspects can translate into so many other parts of life where you go, okay, I got to do this thing and I got to go be in a room with a bunch of people I don't know. And I think they're really beneficial for like social behavior.
Yeah. And so I think my passion, like in terms of like taking all the skills that I've learned from being on wedding days and that kind of thing, I've always kind of had a background passion for like, I love comedy and I love improv. And I feel like that's always something that I've been channeling when I've been trying to like shoot all these weddings is that like, I'm just trying to become a funnier person because that's something that I'm really passionate about. And so I think that would probably be...
Do you do improv?
I just did an improv...
Do you go, have you been in improv?
I've just did an improv workshop on Saturday and I've done my second ever stand-up set this year. So I think these are like, in terms of like, just thinking back to your original question of like, you know, what other passion projects do I have? It's probably that. It's probably wanting to get into comedy and into stand-up and improv. And that's what I feel like I take... and not only all my skills from weddings, but also it will go back into weddings as well as trying to be more entertaining on a wedding day, understanding like joke structures and premise and all this kind of stuff. So,
I think that's amazing. Yeah. As every straight white dude in the history of ever has thought, oh, I should have a stand-up or I should host a podcast.
Exactly.
And so
and here we are.
I am.
Isn't it amazing?
I know, right? I've thought about it, but never done it. But you, everything I know about you, man, just improv or a stand-up set, especially improv, I think would just be right in your lane because you just seem like you have no fear of being dumb.
Thank you.
Which is huge too. Like just going, you know what, this joke may or may not work. Yeah. Let's just go try it.
That's exactly it. So no, thank you for that. It's just fun. It's fun to figure out things that you enjoy and then to take the dive into doing them. And I think weddings hopefully give everyone, you know, when you're shooting weddings, is a great reminder of, it's another Saturday, it's time to perform. And you often will sit there at the start of the day thinking, what am I going to shoot today? Like, what will I create? This weather doesn't look good. And sometimes you'll wonder, like, will I pull it out of the bag? And then at the end of every wedding, you're like, yep, it all worked out. You know, I saw this opportunity in the weather. I found this amazing light. I used the structures in the background to create an awesome composition. Like, it's just amazing. I think it's a really cool weekly reminder that we get given the gift of self-confidence to be like, every week you jump out of the plane with no parachute and every week, you know, it works out. And I feel like that's a really great affirmation to have reinforcing yourself that yes, you can take a leap at something and it'll work out. We're really lucky to have that mental exercise.
For the people that are listening that might not have that same experience, like I can tell you if I shoot 30 weddings in a year, I'm not going to leave 30 weddings going, hell yeah, that was like award winning. It's going to be on a cover somewhere. Yeah. What do you... In the same way when a joke bombs or your 3-minute stand-up set dives, like what? I'm assuming you got a tight 3, a tight 5. What do you what do you do when you leave a wedding and it wasn't what you hoped it was going to be? Like I don't know how often that's happening to you. Yeah. But what do you kind of like that conversation in the car when you're driving home? How do you process through that so you don't feel bad about it?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think with both these things, with stand-up and with weddings, you have the ability to be really self-critical because you kind of know what the product is. Like stand-up's even worse because if the audience doesn't laugh, it's objectively not funny. Like something went wrong. And so you've got a very clear feedback loop. With weddings, you don't know as much unless you're getting feedback forms from your clients and hearing whether or not they like the photos and that kind of thing. But for me, I feel like often our standards can be higher than our couple's standards in terms of like, oh, I messed up, like how I shot that lighting at the wrong angle. So I think for me, it's like always been part of my personality to kind of just be really critical of myself and always be striving to be doing better next time. And so I'll come home from every wedding and I'll definitely have learned lessons like, okay, damn it, I totally should have made sure I checked the skyline before the horizon to see if there was clouds or not because I totally cooked it. Like that sunset would have been better to happen half an hour before sunset. That's when we should have gone, or all kinds of things. I'm always looking to be better. And I think if you can have the mental toughness to like just try and be self-critical at the end of every wedding, and I don't think you even have to try. I think we know. We come home from a wedding, we're like, damn it, I totally stuffed up. Yes. Like for example, the other week I changed camera coming down the aisle, and at the exact same moment they just turned and kissed each other real quick, and I'm like, what the heck? And so now I'm like, okay, the way I fix that in the future is I never change camera down the aisle anymore. Like, it's just not worth that split. It was so fast, but the kiss was also so fast. By the way, this isn't the ceremony kiss. This is like a kiss on the exit.
I was say like, I mean, I can't share this. I've never had that problem. Yeah. I've never missed a shot like that, but it sucks that you did. You know?
Yeah. Oh no, that's right. Sorry, it's not very relatable.
I do think you get like, I get in the car though, and I remember a really specific wedding that I came up with this concept, and I think my business partner Steven at the time was the one that like saw me beating myself up and was leaving a country club wedding. I don't know if you have a country clubs in New Zealand, but it's just a fancy golf course here, and it sucks. And they host weddings on them, and my job is to make it not look like a golf course. And I left this kind of low tier country club wedding that the timing didn't work out that day. Probably the wedding was a referral of a referral of a referral, and it was like a friend of a friend. It was like not everything was perfect. And I got in the car and I was really beating myself up because I think the week prior it probably shot something beautiful in Washington somewhere, and maybe everything else lined up. And I had to tell myself after, and a rec from a friend was, a 10 to them might sometimes be a 2 to me.
Yeah.
Like that wedding might feel like a 2. It might feel like something I'm never going to publish, but they are not wedding photographers. This is their first one. Their Instagram feed doesn't look anything like ours. They might have looked at 3 or 4 other photographers like us, but probably unlikely that they have a lot of other outside influence to determine whether or not their wedding actually looks amazing.
Yeah.
And I don't know that that's always the best advice, but because that can lead you to go kind of, okay, well, you can kind of phone it in and start leaning on that. But I do think it's important to go, these couples more often than not, unless they're a wedding photographer themselves, probably have no idea what the hell they're looking at.
Yeah.
And your work is probably still really great.
Yeah. 100%. I agree. And I sometimes take that into like the approach before a wedding. If it's like a really stressful day in terms of the weather or something like that, it's like, okay, all I've got to do is do better than, I don't know, the wedding photographers were doing 10 years ago, which, we should be able to do. And so like, I kind of just take myself and be like, it's okay. Like, I don't have to make the weather perfect. I just have to make the most out of it. And I'm sure whatever I do is going to be better than what they were expecting to be able to pull out of a bag. So yeah.
My last final question with you is, what's your problem? What are you working on right now?
Oh, that's a good question. Interesting. I think probably that kind of like figuring out that balance in our household and our business in terms of like working together and that kind of thing, and trying to find I think probably just getting more productive and more controlled with my hours and how I work. And so that we're able to give each other a better time outside of weddings. And I think my other problem is kind of, probably like my viral videos, keeping up with, I've now been able to outsource that to Bailey, which has been absolutely amazing. And I think that was something that I was getting stuck on for a long time because I just had all this content kind of piling up and I wasn't doing anything with it because it was too much of a barrier to entry for me. So I think kind of I'm focusing on learning to let go and kind of have someone else help me with the things that I didn't have the time or the capacity to deal with in the past. That's possibly part of my problem. Trying to think what else. I feel like I've been solving a lot of problems in the last year. So
honestly, I mean, I think being able to facilitate outsourcing is huge.
Yeah.
I think usually the uphill battle with that is how long will it take me to set up the outsource process? And at that point, I might as well just do it myself.
Yeah.
And then it, of course, doesn't get done.
Yeah.
But splitting your time, managing your finances, buying a house, you mentioned you're out and running again, so you've got some physicality going on there. Yeah. Limiting the fortnight.
Yeah.
You are like, I feel like every photographer takes on 1 or 2 big projects a year, and that might be client education, pricing, workflow, data backup, finances, whatever. You've done 6 or 7 of these, it sounds like, all in the last off season plus last summer. That's huge.
Yeah. I think I've just become really focused on like what I want to get out of life and my business. And you're right. It's I think being doing exercise was a huge one for me, I think, as well. Like in the past I'd be like, no, weddings are my exercise, and I'd be scared to exercise so I wouldn't be sore before a wedding. But now I've just been able to push through that. It just takes a few weeks of regularly doing something, and then you get used to the pain or whatever, and you actually feel better, I think. So probably
being physically healthy on a wedding day is so. I've bounced around, I weigh, just for transparency's sake, I weigh like 220 right now.
Yeah.
And I've bounced all the way up to 254.
Yeah.
And I've gone all the way down to like 210, and it sucks to not be, whatever that weight is, to be unhealthy or unstrong during that, and on your feet all day, carrying 2 cameras, gear, running around, and the energy that it retains.
Yeah.
It can't be put to words more passionately than being healthy and being a photographer should go hand in hand.
Yeah, exactly. And I think things like probably my problem is trying to find a new assistant to train up, because I've had that's probably like one of the best things I've done for my business in the last few years has been like training up assistants, and I have an assistant with me at every wedding, and that has been such a game changer. Like I feel like without that, my lifespan in weddings would be so much shorter.
I want to dive into that a little bit. I've never purposely brought assistants to weddings.
Yeah.
I've had people that were like, you're cool, you kind of want to learn the gig, and I'm bored, come hang out with me.
Yeah.
But what are you really leaning on for your assistant through the day that isn't replaceable by just doing it yourself?
Yeah, sure. So the kind of initial inspiration was the fact that I needed this thing rolling at all times in case I was going to do something viral. So their initial role was there to kind of just be there as a content creator for me. And then beyond that, they started filming Instagram stories that you see, all my behind the scenes Instagram stories throughout a wedding day. So there'll be like 10 to 15 cool behind the scenes stories of the wedding and the ceremony and me working and having fun. And it kind of helps give people a really good sort of peek behind the curtains in terms of what it would be like to have me on your wedding day. So that's kind of what it was initially for. But also I decided that I wanted to focus them on having no camera in their hand apart from this, so that it didn't add any extra workload for my editing and all that kind of front. And so then they got plenty of time besides filming random stuff to do other things. So keeping my drink bottle filled up at all times, bringing me my sunblock, going and reparking the car in between locations, bringing me canapes or food while I'm doing family photos, just all the little things that my brain kind of works 1,000 miles a minute, and on a wedding day especially, so often I'll be like doing the family photos and, can you get the classic things for bride and groom, this and that. And I was finding that I think photographing a wedding day takes up 100% of your capacity. And I was trying to do all these little extra things that my brain could think of, but my body could barely keep up with. So like running back to the gear bag to get the drone out, unpacking the drone, shooting the group photo, putting it back while calling the next group photo, all this stuff. And so I realized, no, like this is beyond this 100% of just focusing on taking the photos. I need someone else doing all the other things. So parking the car, getting food and drink, moving the gear bag, all that stuff. And so like, how I shoot, I'm like rolling around doing crazy stuff. So they're kind of just running around behind me.
I think it's huge.
Yeah.
I think it's huge to just, it's all that little extra thing. And also, and for me, at least, cause I'm a hyper extrovert, it's a built-in buddy. Yeah. Like it's nice when something silly is happening to look at your buddy and go, are you also seeing this?
Yeah.
And so having that, but yeah, like just to be able to drink water on the day of
100%,
something that you're right. It takes 100% of your energy to shoot a wedding.
Yeah.
Because anytime the cup isn't up to your eye, or the camera cup isn't up to your eye, you're missing something.
Yeah.
And that means also, I'm not going to eat, I'm not going to drink. There's been plenty of days I shot the whole day on a Rice Krispie treat and forgot to eat food.
Yeah.
So that's amazing. That's a great.
That has been a huge, like, it's taken off so much of the weight of weddings for me. It's made the day so much easier. That paired with doing shorter hours now has just been so awesome, and it helps me give so much more creatively when all those other background tasks are just taken out of my headspace and I can just focus on taking good photos. So, but the thing is, both my amazing assistants have both moved to the South Island. So I'm about to have to start finding another person and training them up. And so that's my problem. That's my problem right now, I think. Yeah.
I do want to note something you just said, because I think it encompasses the entire assistant thing really, really well, is that it allows you to give more creatively because you're not focused on other things. And I think we can do that in our businesses a lot. We can outsource X, Y, Z, and so that we can focus on things that are right in front of us on the screen. But to manage the day of and know, you know what, I'm not going to be able to get the output that I want unless I have this taken care of, I think is really huge. And just really self-aware of your own creativity to know that's going to benefit you by just it's going to cost you money. It's part of the overhead, but at the end of the day, it's a priceless transaction to be able to get better work out of it.
Yeah, I think for me, it's like an investment I'm so willing to make just to. It's almost like a quality of life upgrade. I would never fly business class because I think if you fly business class, you're properly rich. I can't even ever imagine myself doing that.
You have a yacht. You own a boat in a marina somewhere.
That's right.
Flying business class.
And someone else is paying for your flight. But for me, it's kind of like it's like this 10% extra cost for like so much more comfort. You know, it's like paying that little bit more to invest in just like everything going smoother. It's like getting through summer with air conditioning instead of just a fan. You know, it's like I'm very happy to invest this money because I know it's going to make everything so much easier. Like I'm not dreading going to a wedding because I don't have to worry about lugging a bag around all day and this and that. Like I've got a buddy there. They're going to do a lot of that heavy lifting for me, and I can just focus on having a camera in my hand and capturing it all. So it's been a huge it's like autopilot on a Tesla. All right. It's fantastic.
And if you're looking to get a Tesla, use my promo code. Put a down payment on one. He's got a promo code. You can get the Cybertruck.
Exactly.
Man, dude, I thank you so much for your time today. This has been really great. I'm so glad we got a chance to like do this, and obviously next time I'm in Auckland or something, or if you're ever in Chicago, it'd be really great to catch up and hang and
play some squash.
We'll go find some squash. Yeah, I want to play squash. If you play squash and you're in the States, in the comments, please let me know where I go play squash with you.
There
I just want to play. I've seen it in too many movies growing up, and it seems fun.
It's amazing. It's amazing. Oh, cool, man. No, thank you so much for having me. It's been so much fun chatting, and cool to be nerding out on all sorts of budget related things. You're gonna have to hit me with those links about your budgeting services. Sure. And it's fun to focus a little bit on your business and to treat it like a little just to get a little bit nerdy every once in a while, to focus some gamification mechanics on your business.
Yeah,
that's such
100% agreed.
Amazing.
Thanks, man. Have a great rest of your day.
Cool. You too, man. Take care. See you later.
Yeah.
Bye.